So, good evening, students. So, let's get back to the completion of the first chapter, Nutrition in Plants. Okay, before I go through with this chapter, let me just have a quick recap of what we learned yesterday. So, nutrition in plants. So, nutrition means that it's a process where an organism takes food and also it utilizes the food in its body. Okay, so that's the two main keywords that you need to know: taking in food, an organ taking food and utilizes it in its body. Okay, now I need to make a clarification here. So when I said taking food, plants prepare their own food. So meaning, for plant, what is nutrition? In other words, you can't tell that a carbohydrate is a nutrient that is included in nutrition for plants. You get what I'm saying? Since carbohydrates are prepared by plants, proteins are prepared by plants, fats are prepared by plants, and vitamins are prepared by plants, which means that mineral nutrition is the only nutrition for plants. That means minerals and water are the only thing that they obtain, the nutrients that they obtain from the surroundings. So meaning, plants have mineral nutrition. Okay, so plants prepare their own carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and vitamins. So we learned yesterday that carbohydrates are prepared from carbon dioxide and water. Let's look at the equation. So carbon dioxide and water, in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll, carbohydrates are prepared and oxygen is released. So this oxygen we can breathe. Now, for preparing proteins and preparing vitamins, an extra component is needed, which is known as nitrogen. Okay, so the environment contains the air contains 70% nitrogen. But then, even though plants have stomata, and well, it seems that they can use the nitrogen from the air through the stomata, they cannot. Nitrogen needs to be absorbed from the soil. So the roots absorb the nitrogen from the soil, and that is used to prepare proteins and vitamins. Okay, now then we saw there are two types of nutrition, that is autotrophic nutrition and heterotrophic nutrition. Autotrophic nutrition means that self, trophic means nourishment. So preparing their own food, they are self nourished. So for the example of autotrophic nutrition is plants, and the organisms that follow autotrophic nutrition are called as autotrophs. And heterotrophic nutrition means that organism depends on another organism for their food, and the example is animals. So they are called as heterotrophs. Now, leaf is the primary center for preparation of food or preparation of carbohydrates. Okay, so the green leaves contain chlorophyll. Chlorophyll pigment is essential for the preparation of food. So not only green leaves, the green stems and branches are also sites for preparation of food. So there's an important thing here to note, that green stem, you can take a special example of cacti. Okay, so for cacti, the stem is, one sec. For cacti, the stem is green. Okay, and cacti contain thorns. So what are these thorns? What do you think, guys? There are many thorns in the cacti. So these thorns are none other than modified leaves. Okay, so since these thorns are modified leaves, it means that these thorns or these leaves cannot prepare food for the plant. So that means they have to solely rely on the green stem to prepare their own food. So you get it right. The where special example is that the stem is the site of preparation of food for the full plant. That is why the stem of the cactus is green. Okay, now then we discussed about cells. Cell is the basic unit of life. Okay, and there are organisms which are unicellular, that means it contains only one cell, and there are organisms which contain many cells, such as humans, which are multicellular. So unicellular or multicellular organisms, the the usual structure of a cell is represented here, and an animal cell contains a cell membrane, which is the outermost layer, a cytoplasm, which is a jelly-like substance between the nucleus and the cell membrane, and also a nucleus, which is a spherical object in the center of the cell. Okay, it has many nucleus has many functions. It contains DNA and RNA. DNA, as you know, that helical structure. Okay, now plants in addition have an outermost layer called as cell wall. Therefore cell wall is very rigid. So because of that, the plant cells are more rigid compared to animal cells, and they have definite shape also because it's cell wall, because cell wall is rigid. Okay, that's just a point to be noted. Now we discussed about photosynthesis. Yes, now examples of carbohydrates are glucose and starch. Many glucose combines together to form starch, which means that glucose is the building block for starch. Now when an iodine test is conducted on starch, it turns blue black in color. Okay, so this starch is a carbohydrate, and this test is usually done on leaves. It proves that leaves are the sites for preparation of carbohydrates. Okay, then we saw the experiment where a potted plant is kept in sunlight and one is kept in darkness, and which one shows bluish black discoloration. So you guys know that, right? The one in sunlight is able to prepare food because sunlight is required for photosynthesis. As you can see in this equation here, sunlight is required for photosynthesis. Okay, so the other one, when it's kept in dark, there's no photosynthesis being taking place, so there's no carbohydrates being formed, so no bluish black discoloration. Now next, when you take a cut section of a leaf, you see cells arranged in the leaf, and then there are many pores. The pores are also called as stomatal openings. So the structure of a stoma contains a stomatal opening. This whole structure is called as stoma. This whole structure is called as stoma. Stoma contains stomatal opening and guard cells. Guard cells are kidney shaped cells. Okay, they regulate the opening or the closing of the stomatal opening. Okay, so that's what we discussed yesterday. Now let's look at the next section. As 1.3, that is the other modes of nutrition of plants. We told that plants have usually autotrophic modes of nutrition, but then there are certain plants which have heterotrophic mode of nutrition. So heterotrophic mode of nutrition can be divided into three. Okay. It can be parasitic, it can be holozoic, and it can be saprophytic. Okay, now let's see one by one. Heterotrophic nutrition itself means depends on other organisms for their food. Okay, now let's look at parasitic mode of nutrition. Parasitic mode of nutrition. Parasitic mode of nutrition is where it's a heterotrophic mode of nutrition in which a plant depends on the ready-made food from another plant for its growth and survival. It's easy to know this. For example, Cascata. It is yellow in color. Since it's yellow in color, it has no chlorophyll. So since it has no chlorophyll, it is not an autotroph. So since it's not an autotroph, it has to depend on some other organism for this food. So what happens is this Cascata grows on other plants, grows on trees, grows on the branches of trees. Okay, and then it derives its nutrition from these trees. So in your textbook figure 1.5, it can be seen that there is a yellow wiry thing which is growing on the branches of the trees. This is nothing but the plant cascata. And in a parasitic mode of nutrition, there are two elements. Okay, so one is parasite and the other is host. The parasite grows on the host, okay, by using climbers. It's an example. It's just one of the examples where cascata uses climbers usually. Okay, so in parasitic mode of nutrition, there is a parasite and a host, and the parasite feeds off the host. Parasites depend on the host for its nutrients. It attaches to the host and takes up the nutrients from the host. It takes ready-made nutrients. So what happens is the host is deprived of nutrients. So the host does not get enough nutrients. So another example of a parasite which grows on humans is the human lice, which grows on your hair. It's not present in everyone. It's really present in some people. But then this thing, feeds off the blood from your scalp, from your head. So it can be it is considered as an example of a parasite because it depends on a host that is living and it deprives the nutrients from the host. Okay, so meaning animals can be parasites, plants can be parasites. Okay, now here what we discussed is that it's plants having a different mode of nutrition other than autotrophic mode of nutrition. So one was within heterotrophic nutrition is parasitic. Okay, now next one is holozoic. Okay, now holozoic mode of nutrition is simple, guys. Holozoic mode of nutrition is what humans do. Humans eat organisms as a whole, or we kill the organism and eat it. So being it another animal or being it a plant, we kill the plant, we cut off the plant and then we consume it. So taking the food as a whole. So example of this is humans, obviously, animals, the carnivorous animals. But apart from that, there are some plants which show holozoic mode of nutrition, and that is what is important. So a good example of a class of example for this is insectivorous plants. So these are plants, but these are insectivorous. Insectivorous means consumes insects. Okay, so what do we see? These are insectivorous plants. So there's a dilemma here. These insectivorous plants are what in color? These insectivorous plants are green in color. So meaning they have chlorophyll and they can prepare own food. But they do not obtain all their required food from they cannot prepare all their all their food. They do not obtain all the nutrients. Nutrients are insufficient. Nutrients are not enough. So they consume insects. Get it? Insects have the extra nutrients which are required by these insectivorous plants. They grow on soil. These insectivorous plants grow on soil deficient of nutrients, and this deficiency is matched by consuming insects. Okay, guys? In nutrients. A good example for this is the Venus flytrap. And another good example for this is, which is given in the textbook, is the pitcher plant. Okay, so since in the textbook pitcher plant is given in detail, I'll talk to you about that. So let's see. Pitcher plant. Okay, suppose this is a plant. It's a leaf. Okay, so in pitcher plant, the modification that is seen is arises from the tip of leaves. So which means in pitcher plant it is a modification of the leaf. The tip of leaf elongates and forms the lid. Okay, and then beneath the lid is the pitcher. So one sec, guys. So guys, it's the apex of the leaf forms the lid of the pitcher plant. Okay, so there's a pitcher. Actually, this apex of the leaf comes from, wait, hold on. Yeah, okay, it arises like this, goes up and forms the lid. Okay, now it's like this, goes up and forms the lid. Okay, and the pitcher is there and beneath. Okay, so pitcher, you must know, pitcher is equivalent to how can we put it, a jug. Yeah, maybe a jug. Yeah, you must be having one at your home where there's a handle, and this is it's called a pitcher, or maybe you can consider it like this, like a pot. Yeah, so it's like having what do you say, a large cavity, you can call it. Yeah, a cavity, large cavity is there. So that's where this name comes from. So it's called a pitcher plant, cavity to store something. Okay, so it's just a pitcher. Okay, fine. So this pitcher plant, okay, what happens here is initially the lid is open. Initially the lid is open. Okay, so what happens is an unlucky fly or insect will come and sit on this. Okay, so what happens then, after an insect lands on the pitcher, the lid closes. So upon the lid closing, this poor insect can't get away. So, and there are also many hair like structures. Okay, called hair itself. There are many hair inside this pitcher. Okay, this is directed downwards. This is directed in such a way that once the insect sits on the pitcher, it's forced to move downwards because of the direction of the hair and the movement of the hair. The hair will move in this direction. Just keep on moving downwards till it reaches the bottom. So all along this path, what happens within the pitcher, all along this path, secretions are being released from the pitcher. Okay, these secretions will digest the insect and then release the nutrients, and which are then absorbed by the plant. So the plant gets the nutrients from the insect. So what happens is a fly lands on the pitcher, the lid closes, there are hair present around and inside the pitcher, and this fly is directed downwards. The enzymes are released from the pitcher and then which digest the insect, and the nutrients are absorbed from the insect. So this is a heterotrophic mode of nutrition where the plant obtains food from another organism and not prepared, and the nutrients are not prepared by the plant itself. Okay, so you can see guys how it's a heterotrophic mode of nutrition. So heterotrophic mode of nutrition, we discussed parasitic mode of nutrition, which example is cascata. It depends on other living organisms. It depends on a host. It obtains nutrients from them. Holozoic mode of nutrition, where the organism as a whole is consumed by another organism. Example is humans and insectivorous plant, where insects are consumed. So yes, that is it about parasitic and holozoic mode of nutrition. So then let's move on to the next topic. Okay, this is an interesting topic, which is saprofitting mode of nutrition. Okay, this is really important, guys, so pay attention. Saprotrophic mode of nutrition. Okay, so let's get away with the definition first. Okay, saprotrophic mode of nutrition is a mode of nutrition where an organism depends on dead and decaying matter. This is the important word, guys. Dead and decaying matter. In saprotrophic mode of nutrition, an organism depends on dead and decaying matter for their food. That is where it's highly different from parasitic mode of nutrition. In parasitic mode of nutrition, there is a host. Remember, guys, there's a host. An organism obtains food from the host and not from a dead organism, not from a dead host. It's a living host. Here, the organism obtains nutrition from dead and decaying mode of nutrition. Such organisms are called as saprotrophs naturally. Heterotrophic nutrition, heterotrophs; autotrophic nutrition, autotrophs; saprotrophic nutrition, saprotrophs. And example is fungi. Okay. So there's activity here that's being told, activity 1.2. In that it's told that what is, if you take a piece of bread and then if you sprinkle some water in it and then leave it in a moist place for 2 to 3 days, you can see that there is a fluffy patch on it, and it looks like cotton like threads on the piece of the bread. So it has a very distinct discoloration where a little bit yellowish, little bit greenish discoloration is present. If you leave it for a long time, it will turn black. So what this indicates is that fungi is growing on it. Okay, so the fungus which is grown on this is known as Rhizopus. Okay, guys, that's just an extra information you need to remember. Okay, anyway, fungi grows on it. Okay, fungus grows on it. Okay, this fungus contains spores. Spores of fungi will disperse via the air and then reach distant sites. So whenever they reach a site which is moist and warm, they settle down and grow. So that's what happened in the case of the bread. So there was spores of fungi in the air. The bread, which was kept moist, which few sprinkles of water was dropped on it, so it's moist and warm. So and it's kept for 2 to 3 days. What happens is this spores will settle on the bread and then start to grow, and then the discoloration will appear. So that is what we saw in the case of the bread. So this is saprotrophic mode of nutrition, where an organism depends on dead and decaying organism for their food. Okay, so what we saw right now is that we saw 3 modes of nutrition other than autotrophic nutrition for plants. So plants, without preparing their own food, they obtain food from other organisms by parasitic mode of nutrition, holozoic mode of nutrition, saprotrophic mode of nutrition. Okay, yes. Sorry, saprotrophic. Okay, So there is an important, what do you say, it's a relationship, an important relationship which the plant shows with other organisms in order to obtain food. This is known as symbiosis. Okay, symbiosis is a relationship where two organisms are present, and then they, so suppose this is an organism and this is an organism, and what happens is they help each other for their survival. So one organism helps another organism and the other organism also helps other, and these both ensure that both survive each other. So this symbiosis is really important for the survival of both the organism. So an example is, okay, these examples are important, guys. Fungi plus the roots of plants, or you can call it the plants itself, roots of plants. Okay, the fungi help form special structures in the roots of plant which help in the absorption of water and minerals. So water and minerals are being absorbed via the roots of plants, and the fungus is helping to do it. Now, what does the plant do? It's quite simple. So what the plant does is that the plant provides shelter for the fungus and also some nutrients. So basically the plants, since it's a huge structure and contains a lot of food, it's providing a lot of nutrients for the fungi, and the fungi in turns forming special structures in the roots helps to absorb water and minerals. So they both are helping each other. Now another very important example of symbiosis is lichens. Okay, lichens is symbiotic relationship between algae and fungi. It's a symbiotic relationship between algae and fungi, and it's pretty easy. Algae are containing a very important structure which is known as chlorophyll. So you can guess by now what happens here. Since they contain chlorophyll, they prepare food, so which is nutrients. So food and nutrients are provided by the algae to the fungi, and in turn the fungi helps the algae by providing same thing, water and minerals. So you saw here how plants have different modes of nutrition, and what do you say, also obtaining a special relationship with other organisms in order to obtain their nutrients. So we saw the other modes of nutrition as parasitic, where it depends on a living host to obtain its food and water, also the nutrients, thereby depriving the host. Parasitic contains a parasite and a host plus parasite. And holozoic nutrition, which is seen in insectivorous plants, where the plants eat insects in order to obtain the nutrients which are deficient in the soil. And saprotrophic nutrition, where the example of saprotrophic nutrition is fungi, and what happens here is it eats dead and decaying matter. So that's the main difference between parasitic nutrition. Parasitic nutrition obtains food from living host. Saprotrophic nutrition obtains from dead and decaying matter. Okay, so now moving on to the last section, and that is section 1.5, how nutrients are replenished in the soil. So if there is a plant and it keeps absorbing all the nutrients from the soil contains abundant nutrients, but then it just keeps on absorbing, and then the plant keeps growing taller and taller. Okay, there should be a mechanism to replenish the soil. So since we told that atmosphere contains 70% nitrogen and the plants cannot take this by themselves, this nitrogen is taken up by a bacteria which is present in the soil. Okay, so what happens is the nitrogen is fixed by Rhizobium bacteria. It's a bacteria. This nitrogen is atmospheric nitrogen. Atmospheric nitrogen is fixed by Rhizobium bacteria. Okay, understand that? And this atmospheric nitrogen is converted into soluble nitrogen. Soluble nitrogen. And the soluble nitrogen is taken up by the plants. So that is what happens. So basically, so that's what happens in the phenomena where the plants get the nitrogen. Okay, now since the Rhizobium bacteria fixes this atmospheric nitrogen, what it means is that the soil is getting replenished. Okay, so we told initially that the plants are using up nitrogen, but then Rhizobium bacteria is present in the soil and it's fixing up nitrogen. So what happens is the soil is never deficient, soil gets the nutrients. So actually farmers usually use fertilizers and manures to replenish their soil, but soil nitrogen can be replenished by using leguminous plants. Okay, so that's very important. So this is really important, guys. Leguminous plants, or simply put it, legumes. Okay, example are peas, gram, moong, and beans. This is important, guys. So these leguminous plants have in their roots, what do they have? They have Rhizobium bacteria in their roots. So we know what's important, Rhizobium bacteria. So in their roots, in the roots of legume plants, they have Rhizobium bacteria. So as I said earlier, Rhizobium bacteria fixes the atmospheric nitrogen and converts it into soluble nitrogen. So basically this is kind of a symbiotic relationship where legume plants and plus Rhizobium bacteria. So let us see what the symbiotic relationship here is. The legume plant provides shelter for the Rhizobium bacteria. So usually shelter as in, like, if something can get destroyed by an object and then somebody else prevents it, that is good for the organism. Here Rhizobium bacteria can be killed by foreign organisms, but that is avoided by the presence of leguminous plants, the roots of leguminous plants. So the roots of leguminous plant provide shelter to the bacteria. Along with shelter, they also provide some food. Okay, and the Rhizobium bacteria, well, it's obvious, pretty much obvious here. They provides them nitrogen in the soluble form. So we learned about symbiotic relationship, and we learned about fungi and roots of plants, fungi and algae, like that, which is known as lichens, and also we learned about legume plants and Rhizobium bacteria. So there are 3 examples for symbiotic relationship. 1 to fungi and roots of plants, 1 lichens, which are a symbiotic relationship between algae and fungi, 2, and thirdly legume plants and Rhizobium bacteria. Okay, so basically what the end of the chapter tells is that the nitrogenous fertilizers can be decreased because these leguminous plants can contain Rhizobium bacteria in their roots, and therefore they can fix it. So that's all about this chapter, guys. It's the first chapter. It's pretty easy, to be honest. It's not that hard. Just a couple of reading would do. No need to mug up anything. Just understand the chapter. Refer my video if you find it really helpful. thing is, just understand the concepts. Don't go ahead and just by heart it off the chart. So let's look at the end of the chapter. Keywords: autotrophic, which means preparing food by themselves. Chlorophyll, we know chlorophyll is the green pigment present in the plants, mainly the leaves, can also be present in stem and branches. It is required for preparing food, carbohydrates specifically. And there are heterotrophs, which organisms which depend on other organisms for their food. We saw the three types: parasites, saprotrophics, and also holozoic mode of nutrition. Host is something on which a parasite grows to obtain its nutrients. Insectivorous plants, we know, which eats insects, example Venus flytrap and pitcher plant. Then nutrient, we know what are nutrients: carbohydrates, fats, proteins, minerals, and vitamins. Nutrition, it's process where we obtain, let's see one more time, it's a process where an organism takes in food and utilizes in its body. That is nutrition. Two key words, that is taking food and utilization. Okay, there are two types of nutrition: autotrophic, heterotrophic. Then we saw what a parasite is. We saw photosynthesis, the equation: carbon dioxide plus water gives carbohydrates and oxygen in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll. Saprotrophs and saprotrophic mode of nutrition, yes, we saw that. And stomata, we have also seen. Okay, oxygen enters, carbon dioxide enters through it. Okay guys, so that's it for this first chapter. It's a bit lengthy, sorry about that. I'll try to make it more concise next time, but then I hope you get a thorough understanding of this chapter. Just read the textbook once or twice, minimum twice. Just read the textbook, but don't by heart it. Okay, so thank you guys. So I'll be back with the next chapter. So goodbye, that's all for now.